Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Davis Copilot live series. Today, we are going to be diving deep into what powers the intelligent assistant that we have, starting all the way from its architecture. I'm Safia. I'm a principal solutions consultant with Dynatrace based here in Toronto, and I am going to be your host and moderator for this session today. I am being joined by Gabby. Gabby, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby. I am the Senior Product Manager responsible for Davis Copilot. I've been with Dynatrace for around 7 years, and I am based in Austria.
Perfect. Welcome, Gabby. And then we also have an architect who actually lives and breathes this thing. So, Thomas, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Safia. My name is Thomas. I'm the technical guy who loves machine learning and artificial intelligence, and currently working closely together with Gabi to bring our Davis generative AI offering to life.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today. We will be talking all things about Davis Copilot. This whole journey started with a customer asking me, can you as Dynatrace tell us what we need to monitor in our LLMs and our generative AI engines? So we want to tell people as Dynatrace customer zero for our Davis Copilot, what are the things that we are going to, or how do we monitor Davis Copilot using Dynatrace? So let's dive deep into it. We have some content prepared for you about how we monitor Davis Copilot. We'll start sharing. And Gabby, while we get started, can you please show us or tell us a little bit about what exactly is Davis Copilot?
Yes, absolutely. So in case you haven't heard about or actually interacted with Davis Copilot yet, it is essentially our LLM-powered generative AI assistant. And as we know with most Gen AI assistants, the real value here lies in boosting your efficiency and productivity so that you and your teams can get more done quicker. And we do this and we provide this by looking at a couple of main pieces. So firstly, with Davis Copilot, you can analyze data quicker and easier without needing to battle syntax errors simply by generating queries from natural language. So it means you don't need to have a deep, comprehensive understanding of DQL in order to get started, in order to start exploring data with Dynatrace. The next functionality that we have, which is the ability to actually onboard quicker and to get a deeper understanding of our DQL by generating natural language explanations and summaries from existing queries. So this is a super powerful functionality for anybody who is completely new, who is trying to onboard, who is starting to learn DQL. What we offer as well is a global chat interface. So we can just move on to the next slide here, where what we do is we actually give you an overview of all of our documentation for any onboarding and support questions. And then what we have done as well is we actually provide you deep integrations with a bunch of different apps so that you can get a much deeper understanding of what exactly is going on in your environment. So here we can see an overview of like a quick explanation of what has happened with a particular problem, why it has happened, and actually also actionable steps to remediate it. We also provide an overview of database execution plans. And if we do just pop through to the next animation, yeah, so that's execution plan insights that we provide. There we go. And here what we are also showing now, this is actually brand new in one of our apps on threats and exploits, where we can give you an overview of security detection findings. So we do have these deep insights, and pretty much the deep value of Davis Copilot is that you get a much better understanding of what's happening in Dynatrace without needing to have that deep subject matter expertise.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Gabby. That was indeed a crash course on generative AI, what Davis Copilot is, what are the different skills that it offers. And we are super thankful for actually having a generative AI assistant within Dynatrace because it makes fiction kind of go away when new teams are onboarding into Dynatrace and into observability in general, because it kind of helps answer all the questions that we have around anything data, around any general observability questions. So while that is amazing that we have this generative AI assistant that can take care of the data and then provide us answers in natural language, Thomas, can you please get us started on what exactly was, how did you think about the architecture overview? What is under the hood of the AI, and what are the different components of this architecture, and how do you actually decide to come up with this?
Yes, for sure. So, as Gabi, I would like to start out with the architecture behind this skill, which we call query data with natural language. And on a very high level, all the skills we have built so far are retrieval augmented generation approaches. So basically, we go somewhere, fetch the relevant context, build a larger prompt, and send one or more prompts to an LLM to get the job done. And especially with the skill where we would like to generate Dynatrace query language out of natural language, that's a particular challenging task there because of several facts. One fact is that DQL is not as prominent in the internet as SQL. In the future, it will be, but as of now, it is not. And none of the existing LLMs have a very comprehensive understanding of the semantics and syntax of DQL. So we need to teach it. Then another thing is that our Grail data lake is a very generic data lake house. You can ingest any kind of data you're interested in. It's a schema agnostic database. And for that reason, it's not that easy to generate DQL queries which are adapted to the customer's context. And that's the reason why we had to build on top of a, let's say, static and generic retrieval augmented generation approach. We had to build something which reads into the customer's data, if he opts into that feature, obviously only, together to build an understanding, what we then call internally this semantically indexed customer data. So every 24 hours, if a customer opts in, we go to the customer's data, which is ingested in Grail, any kind of metrics, logs, BIS events, business analytics data, and whatnot, and build out of that this semantically indexed customer data. When we have this data available, it's merged with the statically available data about Grail, which is all available to all our customers in our documentation, especially also in the semantic dictionary, which is publicly available on our doc sites. And then the statically and dynamically customer data indexed in a semantically searchable way is then used to build up a proper prompt there. One important thing to mention about this whole architecture is also that right from the beginning, we start thinking about this PII reduction. So many customers have concerns that their, let's say, private data or sensitive data gets sent out to whatever large language model provider we are using. And for that reason, we have built in those PII filters. Whenever data is leaving the Dynatrace context, we are applying a PII reduction there. In order to also make sure that the offering we have in the product more or less answers product-related questions or answers questions which can even be answered in particular with Grail, we have also some guardrailing mechanism in place. And this guardrailing mechanism prohibits questions like, I don't know, who is the girlfriend of Brad Pitt or something like that in our notebooks, in our dashboards. You will get a funny answer from our system then. If that guardrail is passed, then we will have one or more iterations to come up with a proper context pulled out of the semantically indexed customer data, the dynamic one and the static one. A proper prompt is formed. The user input combined with this Grail and DQL context is sent to the LLM in a PII reducted manner one or two times in order to make the answer more precise. And finally, the LLM with that, let's say, in context teaching thing is able to actually generate the DQL query. And then after the DQL query is verified that it is executable, it's sent back to the customer. Because this session is about observability, one point you should note on the diagram already is this teeny tiny gray dashed line with the nodes into self-monitoring, uh, where you which should depict that we actually also collect the actual prompts which are sent to the LLM and the answers which are coming back from the LLM, also in a PII reducted manner, in order to be able to react to, let's say, negative feedback which we get, or positive feedback which we get from customers with the thumbs down, thumbs up feature in the product itself, or to identify bugs and remediate bugs. So that's already the first very important part, which helps us improving and debugging our generative AI offering. It's our self-monitoring. It's deployed all over the globe, and measures are taken that we have the proper data in the proper place, and this data then later on is used in manual processes to see how we can improve, for example, the retrieval augmented generation approach to come up with a more improved GRAIL and DQL context or things like that. Yeah, that's at the very high level how this retrieval augmented generation approach for for turning natural language into the query language, Dynatrace query language, works, is built up. And so, Safia, if you go to the next slide, a very similar picture is showing up when we talk about the chat, the global chat interface Gabby has been mentioning in her introduction. It's more or less built same along lines. The only, under quotes, difference between those two approaches is the knowledge base, which is used for the semantic search, and the context and the prompt engineering under the hood. In this particular case, for the chat application, we are tapping into many officially available data sources like our documentation, our developer portal, a community, and blog posts and stuff like that. And this is more or less, this is way more static context. So this Dynatrace knowledge base doesn't need that rapid an update cycle as for the context-aware queries, which I have been showing on the other slide, but that's more like on a weekly basis. Nevertheless, the underlying functionality, the conceptual underlying functionality, again, is a retrieval augmented RAG approach, generation approach, where we again have guardrails. Please only, we allow our system only to answer within the Dynatrace context and not out of Dynatrace context. And then we ask our Dynatrace knowledge base and ask an LLM to provide a nice summary in a nice formatted way in your in a markdown response, which you then can see in the chat as an output. And here the same thing apply. We have PII reduction, we have self-monitoring of all the prompts. And what I would like to add now here is about the monitoring. Now I've only talked about the self-monitoring, but actually we have way more than that. Because on each of the Dynatrace CoPilot installations, we are also using our own Champagne and have the recently deployed Python 1 agent installed. So, for example, when we are having troubles figuring out what's going on within such an LLM orchestration workflow, we can just go to our traces app and look up the traces, how they went from the UI down all the stages in the Dynatrace platform until it finally hits our Python implementation of that orchestration framework. Yeah? How frequently is the knowledge base trained? As of now, it's, I think, more or less on a weekly basis, because our typically Dynatrace documentation gets a weekly or bi-weekly update with every sprint release, and that's for now sufficient. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, Thomas. Thank you so much for walking us through the architecture. I think somebody who kind of talks to customers a lot, I do get this question all the time, which is PII redaction. Are you sending my data into the LLM, and how do you kind of take care of that? So it's great to know that that was a driving principle behind the architectural that we kind of designed for the Davis Copilot, and that we do have different kinds of infrastructure or architecture for different skills that we have, which is the chat function and also for the DQL function, that is the DQL to natural language. So thank you so much for walking us through that. I do understand that we did have like a huge infrastructure migration that was kind of happening behind the scenes for the Davis Copilot, because our inception of Davis Copilot, it has been along for quite some time now. So can you tell us what were the driving principles for that infrastructure migration, and what are the things that you were kind of trying to improve with that migration?
Mhm. So I think one of the basic things you typically try to optimize when you run this kind of a system, obviously, is always cost and quality and maintainability. And one of the things actually, which was a very big thing, which made us believe that this infrastructure change is a good one, is that we wanted to bring the infrastructure closer, let's say, to the home of the majority of our customer base. So the infrastructure which we are moving to will be closer to the infrastructure where most of the Dynatrace SaaS installations are running. That's the main driver. So it decreases latency, improves data locality, improves access patterns, improves the way how security between those infrastructure components can be handled. That's one thing. The other thing is cost and quality. And what I mean with quality is the overall quality of the overall service. And the overall service, as you have seen in my architecture diagrams, is not only the quality of an LLM, it's also the quality in a retrieval augmented generation approach. Which context do you bring to the LLM? So a major component of such a system is the quality of the semantic search. And what we have been investigating is how much can we gain in terms of improved search quality, in terms of search precision, when we would move from the existing solution towards a new infrastructure which provides new ways of semantic search, for example. And with this slide, I am sharing latest results from an internal investigation, how much this search precision will change when we have done our infrastructure migration process from the current solution to the new infrastructure, where we have the possibility to have flexible search configurations. And from that slide, you can see that there will be a significant change in that improved search quality, which then, especially for the chat which we are offering, will have an increased precision in the answers our user base will ask Davis Copilot. There was not. Maybe some people are thinking that one of the major drivers is that we just wanted to have more or better, let's say, foundational models. But to be honest, each of the larger providers or vendors out in the market have more or less equally good large language models, large foundational models, when they are as they go forward. So there is not that much of a difference there. I would argue one difference which we are also looking forward to is to understand that what are the options in the future if we are going to host custom models for various use cases. And here we also see with the new infrastructure provider improved capabilities. So I think I missed a question now. There was one quick question there.
So the question here is, how does Dynatrace ensure Davis Copilot provides explainable, trustworthy outputs? Is there other types of AI being used? I think that answer will come up in our next segment.
I mean, one quick recap I could do this. So the main ingredient for the trustworthiness, reliability, is that you have a reliable retrieval augmented generation approach. And for the slide which is basically showing right now is on spot, I would argue. The more reliable context you provide to the LLM, the more reliable the answer will be. And also, I was not explicitly mentioning that in the other slides, but it was the second part of this question is under the hood. The current LLM provider we are using, they are offering a so-called content filters, which check whether you are asking something malicious or not. And if you will, those content filters are using also other kinds of AI. I would not call it AIs, but under the hood, they are using machine learning models to differentiate between malicious and non-malicious input. This is also something we are leveraging, especially in the guardrail, to make sure that you can't ask Davis Copilot about how to build a bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I think that is sensitive, and then we surely do not want to kind of stop people from asking who is Brad Pitt's latest girlfriend. So I think we certainly want to add guardrails around it, and that is extremely important. So as you have already been mentioning in your architectural diagrams that you have self-monitoring on Dynatrace, that you do this everything you monitor the prompts that are going in just so that you can see if the response was good enough or not. But then how is observability actually helping you with monitoring not just your infrastructure, but also your developmental processes? Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yes. So obviously, it's very important that you monitor your AI workload from dev to prod. That's the main title here. And what I would like to do in the next slides is focus a little bit more beyond, let's say, in production monitoring, which I'm showing on that slide. So the in production monitoring, which we have in place for our Copilot offering, for example, is health dashboards, where we look in on a bare deployment basis. We look into measures like how many requests do we get, how much costs do we have, is there, let's say, a bad user experience because we need to throttle some requests and things like that. We also actually are using our own Davis predictive AI to monitor our generative AI offering by setting up automated baselines on certain metrics which we are collecting from our generative AI offering, split it in various dimensions. So, for example, if the expected costs with its seasonal pattern would be beyond a certain threshold, we would get alerted and can dive deep into that issue and figure out what to do, how to scale potentially the deployment and whatnot. That's the classical, let's say, in production monitoring for an AI workload, which we have in place. As of now, mostly centered around, let's say, costs and reliability. What we also then did is ask ourselves, how can we make sure that with each new deployment of our service, when we change something or when we get the user request that, for example, the guardrail is too strict, how do we ensure that if we change something there, like a system prompt, that we don't hurt ourselves on the other end? And having that in mind, we have built, let's say, larger framework around how we test actually our generative AI offering during development. And there are many factors which are a little bit different than when you develop a normal service there, because a normal, let's say, software service is not that probabilistic or not that creative than an LLM. Even so, many of the providers claim they have rather reproducible LLMs. When you do a one-to-one test, they even react differently if you add a single column in a prompt. And this non-reproducibility, or let's say this probabilistic nature of the LLMs, provide a lot of flaky tests, and you have to take care of that. Also, you want to reduce costs. So typically, you want to mock more than in normal tests. So using mocked LLM responses, using in on build, let's say, unit tests, while you only use real LLM calls when you do some kind of integration tests. Yeah? What's also very important is that you need some kind of regression tests in place. Even if you don't change your own infrastructure, or even if you would not change your system prompt, but from time to time, you are forced by your LLM provider to upgrade to the next version of their model, because they retire rather quickly. I would say they only are good for 1 year. Then they want to use their GPUs for the latest and greatest and newest model, and they want to get rid of the old one. And whenever you do that, you may be surprised how different the system reacts if you update for example, if you would update from a GPT-4o from a November version to the May version or something like that. And each of those regression test results then needs to be investigated. And as we are Dynatrace, we are using Dynatrace also for alerting ourselves while we are monitoring those regression results from build to build, and ingest the data into Dynatrace itself, where we then have alerts in place where we see then if one of those relevant metrics for which are specific to each of the skills, for each of the AI skills we have been building, are dropping significantly, then we will look into it, and a build will fail and stop the normal development process, and we have to look into the details to figure out what actually went wrong from the last build to the current build. Yeah, so that's on how we basically test that stuff during development. And one important point I would like to bring up is when you do this kind of regression testing and you're coming from, let's say, as I did, from a classical machine learning environment where you typically deal either with classification or numerical prediction tasks, then it's a little bit harder to come up with the KPIs to monitor, because it's simple to compute an F1 score or let's say a root mean squared error for a temperature prediction, but it's not that easy and not that cheap, in particular when you have to do those KPIs when you compare text to text, and that's where you need to think about what are the appropriate KPIs to monitor for this kind of retrieval augmented generation approaches. And the Dynatrace AI Observability offering is actually offering a lot there in terms of pre-built KPIs you can monitor. And I think on the next slide, I have a few examples of that one. So typically many approaches where you use yet another large language model, so to say, as a judge, which you ask them to give kind of a scoring on the output of your actual system and the reference system, and assign a number to it. Then for the document retrieval, the slide I already presented, you can come up with some retrieval quality scores, like the search precision I had on the other slide, and all these kinds of metrics you want to monitor during your regression test to make sure that you deliver the AI skill with the quality you're interested in.
Yeah, perfectly. I think that is very important to understand in terms of context switching, that it is easy to come up with statistical models or probability or however you want to say it when it comes to doing KPIs for things which are mathematical. But since this is all text, it is kind of difficult to come up with those KPIs and tying what is right, what is wrong, what is accepted, what is not accepted. So having those and building out those KPI is something which is increasingly important and something that needs to go in the thought process of the architecture itself. So you want to tell us a little bit more about how do you kind of scale all this, and how did you kind of build it as a platform for your teams?
Yes. So one thing also to mention is that the underlying backend service, which powers the chat application in particular, is made available to many development teams within the Dynatrace platform. So, for example, if you go to the Problems app and hit that button, explain me that problem, under the hood, it uses a special version of the API which is powering the chat, and sends over the appropriate context to the LLM to get you an explanation for that. And several teams are doing that. And then the question is, okay, team A, which is doing database optimization or database execution plan explanations, the other one is Davis problem explanations, and the other one is doing Kubernetes event explanations. How do they test that their prompts they are formulating don't show regression and that their feature works correctly over time? And what we have been doing is that we have come up with a let's say dev-centric GitOps approach to that problem. That the core generative AI teams provide a generic testing framework, which is run in our build pipelines, and the solution teams or the specific app teams then can provide in a simple format their test data set to our centralized regression pipelines, and then those tests will be run on behalf of the integration teams, and we will know that our central backend services provides the required value for the integrating teams.
Okay, perfect. At least with you taking the dev-centric GitOps approach, I know there is one person in Dynatrace. His name is Andy Grabner, who will be super happy with the fact that you chose this. So, um, and yeah, so thank you so much for sharing all the details about the architecture and all the thought processes that go beyond not just building a framework, but also how do you want to monitor it, and the fact that observability needs to be built in when you are thinking about the architecture. It's not an add-on that comes on later on. So thank you for sharing all that. And we will move into our very next segment at this point, which is insights and adoption. So we talk a lot about how we use Dynatrace to monitor things. How did we use it to make our developmental processes extremely functional and something that works for the whole organization? Now we want to talk about how do we monitor or how do we track customer adoption for all the cool things that are coming out of the lab. So let's go and take a look at the adoption, Gabby.
Yes, absolutely, Safia. So if we do get this chart up here, we decided we just have a look over like the last 4 months. So we're not sharing absolute numbers, but we do still want to share a little bit of insights in terms of the actual adoption. So first off, we can see that with our unique accounts. So we have seen significant adoption still over the last 4 months. So we went GA with our chat, which was like a really big deal in February this year. And we can see that even though it's been around like now for just close to 7 months, we are still seeing over 10% account adoption every single month. And what is actually even more promising than this, and which keeps on showing us more and more insights, is the fact that it's not just about unique accounts that we keep an eye on, but it's also about unique users. And we can see that we are seeing even more aggressive adoption of users, which means that in spite of our accounts growing, we are actually also expanding our user base within those accounts. And this is quite typical in terms of how a lot of our customers are actually rolling out. So usually what we see is we'll have a handful of people pilot the functionality, and then they roll it out broader in their organization. And we are consistently seeing this behavior, and it is only through this tracking that we do get this type of information.
Yep, certainly. That is reassuring, and that is amazing that we do see this kind of growth in adoption month over month for a new feature that we just released. And can you also provide us a little bit of detail into this chart and what you kind of notice from here?
Yes, absolutely. So this shows us a breakdown of our 3 core Gen AI skills. So we have natural language to DQL and the conversational recommender. So those are the two that have been around the longest in the purple and the dark gray. And what we can see here is that we have a very similar trend. And if we were to overlay this over the same chart as earlier, we'd see that we are actually seeing even more aggressive growth in terms of the actual invocations. And this chart actually does show a 4-fold increase between May and August. So we are seeing a very aggressive adoption of those 2 core functionalities. Now, the blue one that creeps through kind of mid-July is the latest one that we have made available, which is our query explanations. And I can give you a demo on that one a little bit later. And you'll see the adoption here is still pretty low. In all honesty, we haven't made too much of noise about this one yet. So we do need to work a little bit here on our own marketing efforts and getting the word out on that functionality. But we decided we'd wait until after summer for that, since we do usually see a little bit of a slowdown of feature adoption over the summer months.
Gabi, do you mind if I chime in for a sec here?
Absolutely.
Because you're mentioning this natural DQL to natural language, which we are currently now making available to the public. But actually, it has been the first feature we implemented when we started our generative AI journey, because under the hood for training and making our natural language to DQL work properly, we first generated ourselves with the blue feature here on that screen, a set of handful, let's say, pairs of natural language and DQL queries. So that comes in very handy because LLMs are great in explaining things. When it comes, reading kind of computer-like style language and turning it into real natural language. So this was very helpful from the beginning on.
Okay, good to know that. And then, yeah, it seems like all the skills that we have and all the features that we are kind of releasing are being adopted by our user base in a very good fashion. So the next thing that we want to show is this guy, which is the most coveted self-adoption dashboard. Can you kind of walk us through what this exactly is and how do you use this in order to kind of get to the insights that you do have right now?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually something that we are really excited about, because what we've noticed is that we've obviously gotten so much insight in terms of, how we are tracking Davis Copilot ourselves. Whether it's the user adoption, whether it is the more technical metrics that we keep an eye on. And one of the interesting things that we had is that as soon as we started making our functionality available GA, there was a huge demand from our customers to actually also get the same insights. So our customers also want to know how Copilot is being adopted across their own environments. And we have this information available. We have the AI Observability. So we said, well, why don't we just create a dashboard and we give everybody the insights that they are looking for? And it's pretty much this evolution of us having used our own dashboards, our own monitoring for our own purposes, and then simply taking this really great insights and then passing on the value directly to our customers, so that they can also get the insights in terms of how are people actually using Davis Copilot to broaden their own understanding and adoption of their various features, but then also actually getting that insight into understanding where is it that their own core user base is having some trouble with adoption. Where is it that they can maybe run their own internal training sessions? Where can they reach out and actually actively help out with improvements and so on?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it seems like we do have a lot of customers that are actually asking for this dashboard, and then we do want to say that this will very soon be available, that you can actually look into the insights yourselves and then be able to see how your customers are actually adopting to your LLM and your generative AI function or initiatives, and then be able to make business decisions based on how the adoption is going. So we do talk a lot of about insights, about everything that is coming in and how do you track that. But along with all of that, I also think that are there any surprises that kind of stood out for you from the observability that data that you are getting through Dynatrace?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and one of the things that I actually thought I would share with today's audience in particular is the fact that we have the PM perspective, obviously, that's what I'm talking about here. But then we also do have the technical perspective. So that's why I brought up the diagram that Thomas was showing earlier, and I did want to just point out like some of the very interesting learnings that we've had along the way. For example, what we differentiate here is between, firstly, the actual LLM invocations. So if you just click through once, you will see here that, for example, for any standard conversation with our Copilot chat, we do call out to our large language models 3 times for every single skill invocation. And if you just click once more, we differentiate between LLM invocations and then skill invocations. And what is so interesting is diving deeper into the different points of failure and understanding when and where issues may arise. So with any kind of observability and so on, if things are going well, you're not too worried about it, right? But as soon as anything goes wrong, you do need those insights. And what's been really cool throughout this entire process is being able to dive down deeper and deeper into those different layers of observability and in terms of understanding what exactly is going on, and most importantly, when and where do things sometimes go wrong. So on the skill invocation level, we can differentiate between when exactly is there an issue because of the user input. So we had the example, like if you run into a guardrail prompt, if you run into one of the content filters, we can identify that. We can identify when is it that maybe Copilot has had an issue in terms of not being able to give you the answer. So we can track the back-end errors, the front-end errors, the service errors. But then what we can also do is we can look even deeper beyond this. We can track it all the way down into those individual LLM invocations where we can see, okay, but what has gone wrong with this second LLM invocation? Why is it that this is, for some reason, one of the points of failure? So it's been super interesting throughout the entire process, not just identifying across, like, let's say, a horizontal journey, a horizontal process, but actually also diving down into every single one of those layers to understand the different depths and the different levels of complexity in terms of where issues do arise along the way.
That is amazing. The amount of detail that we actually do need in order to make those decisions and fine tune these models. I think that is huge as data asset that kind of comes up as a part of the observability journey. So as we are coming up on our the final segment, which is, can you talk us through, and from a PM perspective, a sneak peek into what are the updates that are coming in? What are the new features that you anticipate going live in the next couple of months, or let's say next quarter, for Davis Copilot?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to give you all a quick insight in terms of what it is that is coming up. I would just like to request that we share the next screen quickly. There we go. So what we have over here, so this is the one that I mentioned earlier. This is our self-adoption dashboard. Now, I did want to give you a little bit more insight in terms of what it is that we will be sharing here. So this is a masked version, just as a heads up to the audience. So obviously we're not trying to share any information we shouldn't be. But what you will be able to see, and this actually gives you an overview of how our demo environment is being used in terms of how Davis Copilot functionality gets used across the environment for all of our demo purposes, which in itself gives you like a whole nother level of insight. And what you will be able to see here is you can get an overview of the active users in your environment, pretty much how this develops over time. You will be able to dive deeper into the actual individual feature adoptions. So having a look at things like which of our skills are being used, what are the actual success and failure rates. And of course, you will actually also be able to get an overview of the different types of topics that are coming up throughout your entire environment. So understanding a lot deeper, not just like the individual questions, which we do know is, of course, like a massive amount of work to like sift through. But you can also get like a high level overview of like what are those core topics that are coming up over and over again via Davis Copilot from your users. And then, as I mentioned earlier, what is also so interesting is understanding when do things go wrong. And obviously, we don't just want to push out the vanity metrics here, but we do also give you all of those deeper insights in terms of understanding when is it that maybe your user base is asking the wrong types of questions. When is it that we are running into guardrails failing? When are we running into DQL not being generated in the correct way? And you will actually also eventually be able to see down here how many bytes of data are being scanned based on those queries that are actually being generated by Copilot. So we are trying to provide a big overview, like a lot of depth and rich insights in terms of how generative AI gets used across your entire environment. So that is the first one that is coming up, and that will actually be available by the end of the month.
You
The
have now
next one,
committed.
sorry, would you say that one again?
I said you have now committed.
Oh no, I can't say don't hold that against me, right? Okay. So I'll have people knocking by the end of September. Now this one, nobody can hold me to, because this one has been GA for a while now, but I did want to show it off today. These are the query examples, and this is such a great way to understand and really get to know DQL so much better. So I have prepared a notebook over here, and these are just a couple of standard examples. So let's start off with a pretty straightforward one, where we are looking up the host operating system for logs. And then what you can get back here is, first of all, you get a high-level summary of what exactly is going on in this particular query. And then you do get a breakdown in terms of every single part of those commands. And we do have this available. We do support a very high level of complexity for the level of DQL that can actually be generated, summarized and explained in this way. So that's also something that we're really excited about. Like Thomas mentioned earlier, this was actually the very, very first feature that we built for Davis Copilot when we started out. So it's really nice. It's super valuable, and what you say, like it's so rewarding to actually see this actually finally come through to market. So we're also very happy to have this one out already. The next really cool feature that we would like to share is something that we call the troubleshooting guide suggestions. So what we have available now is the document suggestions based on vector similarity. So what you will see here, again, in our demo environment, we have a error over here. We can see there are 4 entities that are being affected. And while we've had a couple of these overview tabs for quite some time, we now have a new one over here called troubleshooting. And what you will be able to see here is that Copilot has actually picked up the fact that there is a troubleshooting guide in my environment that may actually help me troubleshoot this issue. So how this actually works is, the very first time that I identify a problem, maybe there's a new one that's popped out in my environment, I can simply create a new notebook or dashboard to document all of my troubleshooting steps. So then the next time a similar problem occurs, this will automatically be suggested as a document that can help me with my actual troubleshooting. And this is all based on the vector similarity. So it's still some of the new AI technology that we're seeing emerge. And this is something that we have had many, many requests for. So also super glad to have rolled this one out over summer.
Yep, I can certainly see why that is valuable, because it then kind of starts thinking about the fact that all the if in case we are seeing the problem again, then the run book for solving the problem, like it can be very simple thing, like maybe restart the server or run this follow-up commands on the server or whatever it is. That entire brain can kind of live in one spot, and the person who gets notified for the problem knows how to go and fix it. So that is a great feature.
Exactly. And then we have another one, and this one we have actually had around for a while, but it is still in private preview. So if this is something that does spark your interest, please just reach out to your account team, your customer success manager, and they will be able to follow up internally about getting you added or nominated for the preview program. But what we have here is a Davis Copilot workflow action. So if I just quickly show you what that looks like over here, is you have a new workflow action over here that says prompt Davis Copilot, where you can start adding a whole lot of information. And if we actually look at what that looks like when it's populated, what you have the ability to do is actually to provide a prompt, similar to how you prompt pretty much any other generative AI functionality. But then what you can also do is, firstly, you can add some additional or supplementary context to your request. And then you can also choose to actually check Dynatrace documentation in order for Copilot to generate a response. Now, you might be asking, where exactly is this going to help you out? But if we actually have a look at this full workflow over here, what happens is that I have a query that checks for the most expensive log queries based on our billing events. And then I pass this through as additional context to Davis Copilot, and I give it a prompt here that says you will receive an overview of the 5 most expensive queries. Please provide suggestions on how this can be optimized. And then Copilot checks our documentation, it checks all of our DQL best practices, and then whenever I run this workflow, I get an overview that gives me pretty much a summary of how those very expensive queries that are running in this environment can be optimized. And then that way we can simply try and optimize the costs and keep those down. We have we've had so many interesting use cases come up. So the one that I wanted to share through over here is that this one actually grabs a bunch of different DQL queries, and then it uses Davis Copilot to provide a CISO report based on that information that it gets through. And then a somewhat similar one here is to provide a report about compliance findings for a particular, I think that's a vulnerability that pops up if I'm not mistaken. So it's so, let's say, it's so broad, it's so powerful, because you can use this in any way that is actually relevant and necessary to you. And that's the power of generative AI that now meets our automation engine, because it means you have full flexibility around what information to pass through to a generative AI. The generative AI can transform, can create, can summarize, can translate, depending on your needs. And then once again, with the power of the workflows, you can decide how to distribute that or how to move on from that process. So there's a lot of promise that we see here. And like I said, this is still in preview, but it's seeming our early results here is very promising.
Yeah, that is amazing. This looks like generative AI on steroids, or anything that you kind of do all the time, which is weekly reports. If in case there's something that you know you want to do it on every Monday morning, you can most certainly script it in so that automation workflows can take care of it. And then instead of getting a response of whether it was successful or not, you can actually get a very well defined response from the generative AI, which tells you how it is, how it was able to kind of summarize all the things that it kind of found along the workflow. So amazing at that. And before we kind of run out of time, I want to ask you something which I am super curious about, is that a lot of our customers always ask us that, okay, you have a roadmap, you do have something, that what are you going to deliver and at what times? So now I want to ask you, since you are here, is that how do things actually make into your roadmap? What are the things that how do you select what goes on the roadmap, and what is prioritized?
I must be honest, that's probably one of the most difficult parts about being a product manager in the AI space right now, because there are so many new and good and exciting ideas that come out. It's such a challenge sometimes to pick the right ones. I wish it was as easy as just saying, let's pick what sounds fun, but obviously that's not how we work here. But it does come down to a very, very careful balance between the following 4 things. So it's customer expectations, competition, market trend, and of course, advances in technology. So we are constantly not compromising, but optimizing between these 4 factors in order to determine what comes next and how can we make the biggest impact for our customers and within the market. So it's about a balance of these 4 topics. But I won't lie, it tends to be a very difficult decision sometimes. To determine what comes next, because there's so much that's interesting. There's so much that we know we can do to deliver value, but of course we have to start somewhere, and we do need to take it one step at a time.
Most certainly. I wish it was kind of all about finding the most fun stuff and then trying to do it, but we do certainly have our customers to answer, and then it makes sense that we kind of keep up with the space and then the technology, new things that are coming in. So, my last question to both of you is going to be, what excites you the most about Davis Copilot's journey? So, Gabby, you want to go first, and then we can
Yes, of course. What excites me most? So I won't lie. Everything in terms of the agentic AI is incredibly exciting right now. We have some very exciting plans in terms of this. So I won't be sharing too much more on that today, but definitely in terms of agentic AI. I see there is a question that came through, and I'm going to be such a tease, but I'm going to say join in next time when we meet again in November, because we'll absolutely be able to share more then.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gabby. Now it's going to be Thomas. What excites you the most?
Building on that, what Gabby said, the agentic journey is very exciting. Also, from let's say from the technical perspective, how to build that in a correct, scalable, secure manner. Because many times when you nowadays hear about agentic frameworks, you associate that with MCP protocol, agent-to-agent protocol, and whatnot. And this is all very young technology. And from time to time, I think that people are overlooking things, that they are not aware of what kind of risks they're taking when they not properly implement that stuff. And if you look at the growth rate of MCP servers available at some listing sites, they grow linearly, exponentially, whatnot, right? But if you look carefully, there is a lot of stuff out there, but not a lot of stuff which is built properly. So what excites me is building on top of these technologies, but in a scalable, secure way, such that we don't have to rebuild it in a time frame from 1 year on now, right? So that we have a solid foundation there to build upon. And what I find the most exciting part of it is that it offers a whole new way how to gain insights into the great data which Dynatrace has available. So Dynatrace is really great in collecting all kinds of observability, business-related data, and then it's a matter of, let's say, hope in the future, a matter of seconds to minutes to get insights between observability and business data and make your conclusions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you so much, Gabby. I'm pretty certain that there are going to be way too many advances that are going to come up. And thank you for teasing in, Gabby. We do have our follow-up that is going to happen in November. So if any of your comments or questions have not been answered, we will most certainly take them back to our team, and then we will provide responses for that in our follow-up discussion, which is going to happen in November. Stay tuned for it. And then we will be most certainly sharing all the new things that are coming up with agentic, with MCP frameworks, and all the new cool stuff that is coming in. We will most certainly be sharing our journey about Davis Copilot and also showing you how adoption looks like 1 month from now. So thank you for tuning in, and then looking forward to the next one. Take care.
See you. Bye.